In the Bryan Kohberger case, there are so many questions right now. Just very recently, 7 witnesses being brought forward from Monroe County in Pennsylvania. And these witnesses, it's not really known to everyone. What is the purpose of these witnesses? So at least 7 individuals from Pennsylvania have been called to testify in the Idaho murder trial of Bryan Kohberger, of course, who's accused of the 2022 killings of the 4 University of Idaho students. Now, these witnesses from various walks of life to do with Bryan Kohberger, they're expected to attend a hearing on June 30th in Pennsylvania, which will determine whether they must testify at Kohberger's trial, as it involves cross-country travel, according to News Nation. Kohberger is facing the death penalty in the killings of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and an off-campus house in Moscow. A little over a month after the killings, Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania on December 30th and extradited to Idaho. One of the individuals called to testify, Searfrost, is reportedly a jail guard at the facility where Kohberger was held before his extradition. Sources confirmed that Kohberger was on suicide watch in the Pennsylvania jail where he was being held. At one point, Kohberger, who had a blank stare, asked officers whether anyone else was arrested. So, we wonder, what is the purpose? Why is the defense calling this jail guard as a witness for Bryan Kohberger? Is that to show how he was acting, whether it was normal or erratic? Is that what his testimony would be? So, folks, we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about, of course, the DoorDash driver. And also, where is this case going right now? Is it, in fact, going to go forward on August 11th? All arrows are pointing that way, but we're not sure. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball, UFC to tennis, and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. BetOnline, the game starts here. Joining me today, of course, is retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor at Albertus Magnus, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good to see you. Thank you for having me on today. Thank you.
So, Mike, what is your take on the calling up of these 7 witnesses from Pennsylvania, all seemingly called by the defense?
Yeah, Bill, we know that the first 5 were called by the defense, and we opine that possibly that they might have been called by the defense in case of that there was a conviction and they could testify by, the defense would ask them to testify about Bryan Kohberger's good nature, that sort of thing, to, mitigate whatever was said in the penalty phase. We have 2 others now, very interesting, jail guards, a William Searfrost and an Anthony Soma. Now, we're not sure who was actually subpoenaing them to testify, but we think it's probably also the defense. And I'm guessing that they're going to testify as to how he had acted, how Kohberger had acted in jail while he was waiting extradition. And one of them, Anthony Soma, apparently may have been a classmate of Kohberger's at the Monroe Technical Institute when they're both studying criminal justice. So maybe there's that connection. Maybe they were friends and he could testify as to Kohberger's placid nature. But we're not sure. But they are going into court and they're challenging this subpoena.
You know, Mike, it's interesting because these are witnesses clearly being called by the defense, and calling a jail guard. What does Ann Taylor wish to accomplish here? Just regarding, there was one thing that Bryan Kohberger said what was well publicized.
Right.
When he was in jail, he asked the jail guard, "Has anyone else been arrested?" Now, boom, there is a perfect opening for a defense attorney to try to create doubt now.
Exactly.
Is it almost like Kohberger is saying, "Oh, I had an accomplice. Has anyone else been arrested?" I mean, thinly veiled, loosely. I mean, I don't think it helps the defense that much, but it does create a little bit of doubt.
Bill, you're right. It does, because once he's arrested, obviously you have to give them Miranda and that sort of thing. This is a spontaneous statement. He's being arrested. Oh, anybody else? You guys ever arrested anybody else? Anybody else being arrested? Did you arrest anybody? That could be in his mind, a little plant of doubt, or whatever. Maybe he's trying to be intelligent. I don't know. But Ann Taylor, you're right, could possibly use that and solicit that information from any prosecution witness that was there at the arrest and may have heard, and maybe, or could be, well, it was in the jail that one of these two individuals, Searfoss or Soma, had actually heard that. The strange thing is she could get that out through them, and therefore, without even the prosecution calling them, she could get that out at trial. If they were going to testify at trial, not at the mitigation stage, she could possibly get that out at trial as a defense witness. But at the end of the trial, after the prosecution has shown all the DNA evidence, and all the mountains of evidence that they have, this little, spontaneous outburst, the little blurb, may not really plant much doubt in any juror's mind. But you're right, Ann Taylor could use this.
Mike, one of the things I watch, I don't watch some of the other channels, but I read some of their headlines, and like witnesses coming forth, and again, they will testify in a court in Pennsylvania because they can't force them. The court in Idaho doesn't have the jurisdiction to order them to come to Idaho to testify. So they testify in a court in Pennsylvania, and people saying, "Oh, he's not capable of doing this." What does that mean? You know what I mean? What does someone that is an acquaintance or a friend, how can they testify on what this individual was capable of? I mean, to me, that's so ridiculous. Like, oh, this guy so well. He's not. Look, anyone on this earth is capable of murder in the right circumstances, or wrong circumstances, I should put it. So for someone to say, "Oh, he wasn't capable of doing that," it's a ridiculous witness in my mind.
Bill, it's not much. You're right, because we've all known people who, look, as I've talked to my students about this, everyone has, the ability to lie, cheat, steal, and commit a homicide under certain circumstances. That's the way it goes. That's human nature. So for one person to say, "I know Bryan so well, I can't imagine him ever doing anything like this," that's different than saying, he can't do it. No, you can't imagine it because you don't know him very well. Maybe you just know him from work. Maybe you just know him from a running club. Maybe you just know you work out with him twice a week at the gym for an hour. We're friendly. You don't really know people that well that you think because when you find out things that they've done, you're like, I can't believe somebody could have done something like this. It's kind of like a weak argument. Oh, that person, he's not really capable of killing anybody. Oh, yeah? I don't think so. I think it's a really weak argument.
Mike, people said that about O.J. Simpson. Yeah. He wasn't capable of doing that. And they were saying this when the domestic violence case there was I don't know how many reports
Several least.
that his wife had made against him for beating her up, and these people said, "Oh, he's not capable. He's such a nice guy." Like, stop it. Let me play this from Law and Crime here.
Record is replete with notice that we are not prepared to go to trial in this case. The discovery is vast, and we have not had a chance to review it all.
As Bryan Kohberger fights to delay his August trial for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, we're learning more about mystery witnesses who could be called to testify at trial. One who claims to be the DoorDash driver.
My DoorDash driver is suffering.
But others are being summoned to court in Pennsylvania. I look at the new names added to that list.
So the DoorDash driver is quite a big thing, I think. I mean, if in fact the DoorDash driver says that she's on the morning at 03:59, 0400 hours of November 13th, 2022, I pulled up next to a white Hyundai and I saw Bryan Kohberger, and we discussed this on prior shows. Mm-hmm. The interview done back in November of 2022 or December of 2022 in regards to this investigative lead for the police should have been an in-depth interview. And with that interview, they should have showed her what's known as a photo array or a photo lineup. There's an example of it. That is not the photo array or photo lineup, but that's an example of it. Because other than that is the only fair way to pick out a suspect. You can't show them a single photograph. You have to show them at least 6 photographs, all right? So 5 filler photos and the suspect or the principal in the photo array. If that was done and she picked out Bryan Kohberger, and in addition, an in-depth interview was done, I think they have a powerful, powerful witness. Many people will remind me, the copper here, that she was under arrest for driving under the influence and she's not a reliable witness. She's not credible. She's not this. Listen, I've had witnesses in homicide cases that were prostitutes, that were mentally ill, that were drug addicts. And you know something? We don't pick our witnesses. So what is the test to see if someone's credible? Well, that test will be conducted by Ann Taylor when the DoorDash witness goes on the stand during this trial. Mike.
You're absolutely right. I remember shootings in the 4-6, and who's out at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning? A drug dealer shot dealing drugs at, Tremont and Monroe. Well, who's out there that hour of the morning? Not people going to work. It's the people, the night people. So you take it, you do the best you can with what you got. If, she may not be the greatest witness, but she gets there, we know it around 03:59. And if she can, even if she can't ID his face, if she just says to the police, yeah, I parked right next to a white Japanese car. I think it might have been a Hyundai. I'm not really sure. If that's all she could say, that's beautiful enough, because you've got a white Hyundai parked behind the house where she's going to do a DoorDash delivery. 20 minutes later, you see a white Hyundai coming from that direction, tear-assing out of that neighborhood at a high rate of speed. I mean, that's excellent. So even if she can't get his face because it was dark, if she could just say that if she has just told the police that there was a white Hyundai there, I think she's fantastic. So, people can want to discredit witnesses all the time, but the fact is, you're right. Ann Taylor and the prosecutor will challenge her veracity and her reliability in court.
And they got to be very careful with how they treat witnesses. Also, a witness that potentially could have a mental health issue, a witness who has lots of trauma in her own life that Ann Taylor may bring up as a way to diminish her. But the defense has to be careful, because a jury can smell this and they could use it against the defense. I don't like the way she interviewed that witness. I don't like the way she tried to minimize the witness. I don't think she was fair to the witness. So all of those things are a double-edged sword, but Ann Taylor, being a good attorney, knows that, and she will be careful. Let me go back to Law and Crime, to the video here.
Piece together who they are and how they might fit into the case. And we'll also talk a little later about the woman who told police during a traffic stop in Washington last year that she was the DoorDash driver who delivered food to Xana Kernodle minutes before police say Xana and her roommates were murdered. As you know, Bryan Kohberger's attorneys say he maintains his innocence in the murders of Maddie Mogen, Keely Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. Police say the 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death in that home on King Road just after 4 a.m. on November 13th, 2022. The case was shocking and beyond sad. 4 students murdered for no reason at all after spending an evening out partying after a football game. Bryan Kohberger was charged more than 6 weeks later and arrested at his parents' home in the Poconos. Now, police say that Kohberger's DNA was found on the inner snap of a K-bar knife sheath, just like this one, that was left next to Maddie Mogen's leg. Prosecutors have said that Kohberger bought a K-bar knife, sheath, and sharpener from Amazon 8 months before the murders, when he was still living in Pennsylvania. Kohberger's lawyers may argue at trial that his DNA was somehow transferred onto the snap of the sheath, or they could argue that someone planted the sheath. The prosecution and defense have both made that suggestion in various court documents in the past. We just don't know at this point what exactly the defense will argue. But we do know that Kohberger is asking a court in Pennsylvania to order that several witnesses in that state travel to Idaho to testify in his trial. Michelle Bulger, a former professor of Kohberger's at DeSales University, where he got his master's in criminology, was on the list, but her name was later removed. She told the Daily Mail after his arrest that he was one of the smartest students she'd ever had. She called him brilliant. Now, having Dr. Bulger's name taken off that list makes me wonder whether she agreed to voluntarily travel to Idaho. We just don't know because there's a gag order in this case and nobody's talking. I believe she'd be a possible witness in a penalty phase if the case got to that point. Also on the list is Brandon Andriola, who attended the same community college as Bryan Kohberger. He's a military veteran, and he now works as a realtor. Ann Parham, a retired teacher and one-time academic advisor to Kohberger, is also on the list, along with Jesse Harris, who owned a boxing gym where Kohberger trained. Ralph Vecchio is on the list and appears to work at a used car dealership. And the name Maggie Sanders is also on the list, but her connection to Bryan Kohberger isn't known. William Searfoss has been summoned to court as well, and so has Anthony Soma. Fox News Digital reports that Searfoss is a jail guard in Monroe County, where Kohberger was held after his arrest, and Soma appears to be around the same age as Kohberger. Our content...
So I would think that from what I'm seeing here, most of these witnesses are going to be somewhat character witnesses. Even loosely, the jail guards. Oh, what was his behavior like when he was in jail? Oh, he was very calm. He was very quiet. He was, is that help the defense, or, what is up the sleeve of Ann Taylor, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, as I'm thinking about this, I'm listening to, that show. It's possible that they could be used in mitigation if it does get to penalty phase, or in the defense's case in chief, you could introduce character witnesses to discuss a person's lack of propensity to commit a particular kind of crime. Maybe, and I'm just thinking as I'm listening to that maybe the boxing coach might say, look, Kohberger might have been a good boxer, but he didn't have the killer instinct. He didn't want to punch anybody really hard. He was a nice guy. And the DeSales professor, he was really, really bright. The guy was really smart. We exchanged emails, we talked, we did Zoom calls, and, I helped him with papers and things like that. He was a very thoughtful person, could never see any aggression whatsoever. So there might be some of that in the case in chief for the defense at the end of the trial before we even get the jury to finish up, and deliberate. That's possible too. But it's all about his propensity for peace, quiet, his non-violent, no temper, nothing, placid nature. I think that's what it's all about at this point.
Right. He's a mellow guy. He's not capable of
Oh,
any
yeah.
of these things. And that's what we're trying to say. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and family. And if you want to be a member, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with, count them, 5 different levels. We appreciate all of our friends, our family members, and our subscribers who make the Police Off the Cuff YouTube community what it is. And thank you so much for helping us out with this channel. This is Vinnie Politan, who came up with some interesting thoughts yesterday in regards to this.
Pre-trial release of public information. It doesn't become public until the trial. So we're going to learn a lot more. We know about some of the witnesses. One of those witnesses we believe is going to be the DoorDash driver who made a delivery. And now all of a sudden we are hearing about and from that DoorDash driver in the form of a body cam video. Take a look.
You what? I'm supposed to testify against Bryan next year. Bryan? Yep, I killed all the girls up in Moscow. Well, this won't change any of that. You lying on my wrist. I think they would be more concerned about the drug use than the DUI.
And now I have to testify. They murder case here, so yeah, because I'm a DoorDash driver, so yeah.
You have to testify in which murder case?
Murder case with college girl.
Oh.
My DoorDash driver is so Bryan. Very simple.
You know, one of the things that you learn, and Mike, you can agree or disagree with me. One of the things you learn in policing, and good cops do this, is to treat everyone equally. You know, to treat everyone the same. And a person like this, you may be tempted to treat her in a fashion with a little disrespect because she is under arrest for DUI, right? She's got a drug problem. Potentially she has a mental health problem. But it is not your job as a police officer or anyone in law enforcement, prosecutors, defense attorneys, anyone that would have anything to do with her, to look down upon her or to treat her anything less than an upstanding human being. And now many people, of course, are saying, oh, she's got a drug problem. She's arrested for DUI. She's not credible. She didn't see what she saw. And she can't testify against Bryan Kohberger because she's an unreliable witness. Mike.
Bill, she's gonna testify, and she's gonna testify for the prosecution. We're not exactly sure what she's gonna say, but and I was thinking as I'm watching that, the one card I think Ann Taylor could play effectively against this against MM, the DoorDash driver, would be, instead of attacking her credibility based on some issues she's having with narcotics or alcohol, to say, look, isn't it true that you got a deal to get the DUI dropped in order to testify at this trial? Was there some sort of deal made for your testimony and imply that she is testifying as the prosecution would want her to testify against Kohberger in exchange for getting a DUI collar knocked out? That's I think the one way Ann Taylor could actually challenge her credibility without going into anything personal or about alcohol or narcotics or some stress or that she's undergoing, because people relate to that. Everybody has an issue somewhere in their life that they're dealing with, but I think this is the one avenue she could go and just gently attack her credibility. And so the jury might say, okay, she's a DoorDash driver. I'll look at other things and other piece of evidence, but I won't really consider her all that much because her testimony might be just doctored a little bit because some charges may have been dropped against her.
Mike, we want to also point out that this was from the body-worn video from the arrest on September 5th, 2024.
That's right.
So potentially she was interviewed way back in 2022, either in November or December. And
Right.
as we spoke about, an in-depth interview. And if she told the police exactly what we're talking about today on June 26, 2025, but she obviously, this recording was on September 5th, 2024. If she told them the same thing, then that lends a lot of credibility to what she said in November or December of 2022, especially if accompanied by an in-depth interview and a picking out Bryan Kohberger in a photo lineup, a photo array.
Absolutely, because if she testifies at trial to exactly what she told the police after she was first interviewed late in November, then that could always counter any allegations Ann Taylor could possibly make that she doctored her testimony. So long as she sticks with, and I think Bill Thompson will do that, stick with a really narrow scope of direct examination and just leave it at that. And Ann Taylor will have difficulty then attacking, because if there's no change in testimony from what she originally told the police, there's no way you could attack her as being non-credible. So very interesting. Good point. Really good point.
100%. Let me go play a little bit more of this Vinnie Politan interview.
Yeah, but how did she end up being questioned by police? How does she end up in the back of the cruiser? We're going to need some help with this, so we're going to bring in our guests here to help answer that question. Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas and retired police commander Mike King. He's also the host of the podcast Profiling Evil, and the author of the new book, Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. Please check it out.
Oh, I don't think we need to hear from these two guys. What we need to do is just to reiterate that the real strong part of this investigation is that the police interviewed her in November or December of 2022. They conducted a photo array. If she picked out Bryan Kohberger in the photo array in 2022, in November or December of that month, it's a powerful, powerful witness. Now she just comes forward because we knew about this DoorDash witness because it was on Xana Kernodle's phone that she ordered food. Now, of course, they got search warrants for all of the victims' phones, so they knew about this. So she was known over 2 years ago. So it's coming out now like it's this smoking gun, this new information. It's not new information. However, people are having a field day ripping her apart. Oh, she's not credible. Let's also underline the fact that the DUI was based on prescription drugs. She wasn't drunk on alcohol. It was from prescription drugs. Does that make it easier? I think she could have made a mistake, and she maybe shouldn't have been driving, taking the prescription drugs she took, but it's not sort of like drinking 6 or 7 beers and, knowing you did that and then get in and drive a car. Mike.
Bill, she's going to come across probably as a very sympathetic witness, and she's not going to be claiming that she directly saw, no direct evidence that she saw this crime take place. She's going to testify that she made the DoorDash delivery, and somewhere, whether or not, we don't know what she said to the police back in November or early December 2022, she's going to just reiterate what she told the police. Maybe it was she saw Bryan. Maybe she saw some man in a white car. Maybe she just saw a parked white car. We don't know. But she's going to come across as a very sympathetic witness, and Ann Taylor has to be careful.
100%. So, folks, this case, again, is getting closer to the trial date of August 11th. There's still a lot of hearings. They have to pick a jury. The defense is still crying that they're not ready. They can't be ready. They won't be ready. And Judge Hippler is going to say, guess what? You better be ready because the case is going. And that's what we believe is going to happen. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, Bill Cannon, and Professor Mike Geary, with Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode